Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a little poem called Kosmos. This is poem number 26 of the 38 of autumn rivulets. We commented in earlier lectures that autumn here is symbolic of that which is old, rivulets of that which is new. We're going to ask by the end of our study here of this poem, why would this poem end up in autumn rivulets? And I think we're going to have some very interesting answers to maybe why. Now the assumption here is that you've been reading with us, along with us, hopefully annotating your own copy of Leaves of Grass throughout your study, right from the very beginning. Again, at LearnStrong.net, our playlist, Talks with Walt, as we are calling this series. And that you've been with us from that opening invitation word, come, all the way up to and including a set of introductory comments of autumn rivulets, and then we just finished with What Am I? Let's turn now to our Nortons to hear a little bit of information about this one. Nortons will tell us, usually meaning an ordered universe, cosmos is here applied to an individual possessing a systematic inclusive harmony. You obviously are going to have to mention Hegel as we comment on this one. As also in Song of Myself, section 24, line number 1. Identical in title and text in the Barrett manuscript, in Leaves of Grass 1860, and all later editions, except that the terminal phrase of line 7, all other theories, was added in 1867. Now, this word cosmos will, of course, because we've been reading Leaves of Grass, not be a shocking or a new one for us. We saw it in starting from Pomanak 2, Eternal Progress, the Cosmos. We saw it in Song of Myself 24, as was just mentioned. Walt Whitman, A Cosmos of Manhattan the Sun. We'll see it in To Think of Time, passage 8. The Great Matters and the Great Masters and Cosmos, and then in the poem Mediums, Democracy and the Cosmos. So as we pick up now this poem, interestingly, the poem is called Cosmos, but the word never appears there. However, we have the repetition in the anaphoria of those first who's, and when you count up all of the who's of the poem, we have 10 of them to work with. Cosmos, let's enjoy. Who includes diversity in his nature, who is the amplitude of the earth and the coarseness and sexuality of the earth and the great charity of the earth and the equilibrium also, who has not looked forth from the windows, the eyes for nothing, or whose brain held audience with messengers for nothing, who contains believers and disbelievers, who is the most majestic lover, who holds duly his or her triune proportion of realism, spiritualism, and of the aesthetic or intellectual, who, having considered the body, finds all its organs and parts good, who out of the theory of the earth and out of his or her body understands by subtle analogies all other theories, the theory of a city, a poem, and of the large politics of these states, who believes not only in our globe with its sun and moon, but in other globes with their suns and moons, who, constructing the house of himself or herself, not for a day, but for all time, sees races, eras, dates, generations, the past, the future, dwelling there, like space, inseparable together. Now, to go back to an earlier lecture where we talked about Whitman and the 5 Ps, one of those being Whitman as philosopher, this poem will take us back, obviously, to Eidolons. So to go back, and I recommend that if you haven't worked with Eidolons, go back and take a look at what we have to say, because so much of the philosophy in this poem will be subsumed or almost predicted in some ways there. I love that he uses this repetition of who, over and over again. In other words, a unifying poet would do all of the things he's going to outline here. Notice, we'll begin first of all by including diversity. Our love of diversity today begins with Walt Whitman. You'll remember in Song of Myself 16 the use of that word diversity. You can go back and look at it. And then, of course, his comment that includes diversity and is nature. Cosmos is nature. Notice, capital N. Are you ready for this? 37 times already in Leaves of Grass we have seen this word nature used this way. I find that compelling, and obviously it makes us think of our Emerson and his classic Nature from 1836, no doubt. The amplitude of the earth, you'll remember this from Song of Myself 20, the amplitude of the earth and the coarseness, only use in All Leaves of Grass is here, and sexuality, of course we'll remember that from I Sing the Body Electric 9, of the earth, and the great charity of the earth. You'll remember charity from Song of Prudence That is to say, charity and personal force. You'll remember that one. Of the earth, and the equilibrium also in a collection of poems called Leaves of Grass, which is constantly emphasizing unity. We'll get to it by the end with together. The word equilibrium, or balance here, of course, as we're thinking of it, the word equilibrium gets used one and only one time, and it's right here in this poem. That's why I argue for people who say, oh, a lot of these poems later on in Leaves of Grass, they're kind of waste of time. They're not worth our time in our study. I'm like, I think they are. The word equilibrium gets used one time and it's here, and I find that a remarkable observation, and why Whitman would choose this word right here. Balance, harmony. Who has not looked forth from the windows the eyes for nothing. In other words, it's more than just sight, it's insight. Can we say perspicacity from our study of Plato's Republic? Again, full lectures at learnstrong.net for those of you who want to run that to ground. Or whose brain, we heard about the folds of the brain 2 poems ago now, whose brain held audience, I love that phraseology, held audience with messengers for nothing. In other words, he makes the observation that if you're going to be a cosmos, then your study has to have some meaning. And I think, obviously, an invitation for us in our reading of Leaves of Grass to pay attention. Who contains, again, back to that inclusivity, believers and disbelievers. I said non-believers here. He calls them disbelievers. Now, we've seen this already. In other words, he is the poet of the believer, but he's also the poet of the non-believer, the disbeliever, and he will see both as of equal value. Notice, he'll go from 2 to 3 in his movement philosophically. From the dualism, we might say, of Plato to the Trinitarianism, the triune of Hegelian philosophy. Who is the most majestic lover. I love how in these catalogings, in these listings, he all of a sudden throws one in that makes you go, wait, what? Majestic lover? Of course, lover can here be sexual as well as obviously metaphysical as well as physical, right? Who holds duly his or her triune proportion. You'll remember triune from Over the Carnage Rose, prophetic, right? Now we're going to get our Hegelian trinity, right? In other words, a 3, a realism, a spiritualism, and then of the aesthetic or intellectual. So you've got those kind of 3 things, and obviously for Hegel it's thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? And in some ways Kosmos is the synthesis. I think Whitman would agree with that. Who, having considered the body, and we've heard often in Leaves of Grass about the distinction between soul and body. Of course, passage 48 of Song of Myself, I've said that the soul is not more than the body is not more than the soul, and nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is. Notice how he plays the game here. Who, having considered the body, finds all its organs and parts good. Now, of course, this idea of good would immediately take Whitman's readers back to the Genesis 1 account. God saw it, it was good. You'll remember this use of the word for the first time in As I Pondered in Silence. And it's fun to read Leaves of Grass and just run down all the uses of the word good. Who, out of the theory of the earth, and notice here we're now working with this philosophic intellectual idea, the theory of the earth and of his or her body, understands by subtle analogies all other theories. I find this remarkable philosophic insight. In other words, it's the pragmatism that James will speak about, and obviously he commented on this as he related it to his study of Whitman, that Whitman always will find his philosophic orientation beginning first with the body, with the earth. In other words, he's very much about grounding himself in the body. Leaves of Grass, right? The theory, we're back to theory, the theory of a city, a poem, and of the large politics of these states. In other words, if we're going to work with subtle analogies, and obviously we think of the allegory of the cave and Plato as being probably the chief exemplar, right, of what we mean by those subtle analogies. Now we're to a theory of a city, a poem, large politics of these states. We've heard that formulation a number of times in Leaves of Grass. Who believes not only in our globe, and again his use of the word globe is fascinating, with its sun and moon, but in other globes with their suns and moons. At Whitman's time, and we've commented on his love of the new science, he's constantly trying to challenge his readers to move beyond what they know and what they think they know to maybe, here, notice, new globes, new worlds, we might say. And obviously, you can see now why this is a poem that ends up in autumn rivulets. In other words, both the old as well as the new, he's trying to bring them together. Bringing together, of course, is the next line. Who, constructing the house of himself. What an amazing little phrase. Used one time in Leaves of Grass, it's right here. The house of himself or herself, not for a day, but for all time. In other words, to somehow live beyond yourself. This is obviously Whitman's goal. He himself wanting to think of himself as a cosmos, as he called himself, of course, earlier in Song of Myself 24. He says it this way, who is constructing the house of himself or herself, not for a day, but for all time. And then here's the ultimate goal, sees, and this sounds so unbelievably modern, post and even post-postmodern, sees for all time, sees races, eras, dates, we're going to get 6 of these by the way, generations, the past, the future, dwelling there. In other words, subsuming everything. Like space, of course, the new science of Whitman's own day, like space, inseparable together. Now this inseparable will take us back to our study of For You, O Democracy. You'll remember it. I will make inseparable cities with arms around each other's necks. If you'll remember, we commented on what an amazing dream that is. The last word together obviously speaks to the goal, to the harmony. And that takes us obviously to 2a. Namely, what are we going to say about this? Well, the great idea of the cosmos and the greatest poet of this cosmos is always going to be about what? Unity, harmony, being together. In other words, can move from 1 to 2 to 3, and then as Lao Tzu says in the Tao Te Ching, from 3, all of the rest will arrive. I love the reading, and we'll say it again at 3b in a second, but I love the reading of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching as it relates to a poem like this, no question. I love it to be the repetition of who again and again and again as he's cataloging and he's playing that game of anaphorias. We've seen it so many times. At 3a, well, we've mentioned a number of times the great Ken Wilber and his philosophic orientation that he refers to as integralism. Of course, sex ecology, spirituality, his very important work where he talks about and uses the word cosmos. And then, of course, a brief history of everything for those of you who already are familiar with some of his work. I mentioned Emerson's Nature of 1836, no question. And I love the reading of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching here, the way in which William Blake playing a very similar kind of game, borrowing from other kinds of traditions to produce the type of philosophy that makes us think a lot about Thoreau. I think as well a lot about Emily Dickinson at 3a in a poem like this. And we've commented already on why it ends up in the collection called Autumn Rivulets. Finally at 3b, a way to own a poem like this. Do you believe in this idea of cosmos? Do you believe in this idea of some kind of unifying theory that brings everything together? And is it possible that your study of Leaves of Grass might be one step in that direction? Whitman, I think, would probably wish it so. Thank you.